why should people not mix voices in their head?
I'm not against mixing voices. I do have a strong resistance to voices that do not connect with each other. That simply means Pastor Mensa Otable ended his last session on doctrine. I want to make sure there's alignment in voices. There's doctrinal alignment. There is relational alignment. There is an alignment which says, this person is living right, doing clean. There have to be a number of alignments. It's very difficult to create voices in your mind that are trying to get a little piece of this and a little piece of that and a little piece of that. The biggest voice in my head says, if I was to sit under this voice for 3 months, would I grow? Not feel good, not just be encouraged, but will I grow? Because if my life is to be sustained, if it's to live, it's going to last, it's going to minnow, then I have to be able to grow. So I'm looking for growth voices. Because you mix too many voices, you're going to get swelling, but not growth. And there's a difference there. Discerning voices, that's what Jesus said, my sheep know my voice. So it's not the latest fad, the latest thing. I live in the United States of America. Every 3 years, there's a big major voice. We got 2, 3 of them emerging right now. Everywhere you turn around, you're going to see them there. But I've been around this long enough to know that very few have lasting voices. So ask yourself, what's their history? What's their doctrine? What's their relationship? Who are they related to? So when I get invited to conferences now, before I do anything, my first question is, are there other speakers there? And the answer is yes. I want to know who they are. Because there are certain places, certain people I don't want to be on the same platform with. Because that says that I'm affirming what is happening there. So you just got to be discerning about the voice. The other thing is, as I'm getting older, I'm closer to 74 now than I've ever been. At this point in my life, if I mess up, I won't live long enough to rehab myself. My runway is running out. You know, everybody wants to see Jesus, but nobody wants to die. So I'm not that eager to see Jesus. But I have to, as I'm getting older, Pastor, I'm asking questions that I never used to ask. Who are the voices I'm associating with? Because as you get older, life becomes more consequential. What you do with whom becomes a voice in the life of people.
Good. So for a young pastor who is not too sure, he doesn't even know what growth is not really sure, how do I determine it? What practical steps should that person take? Just for a young pastor in the 30s, 40s, you know, just trying to figure out, should I follow this guy? Should I follow here? This is popular. Is it a voice I should be hearing? And it could be that both of them are living well. I mean, they are not in any scandal. But how does he focus on one?
Now, that's a difficult question, because now they are determining which voice to follow. So if I was a younger pastor right now, emerging leader right now, here's some of my thoughts on that.
We will be
One is, I would first look at the
after
leaders themselves, their longevity, their history, who they are. I would read up on them. Nowadays, you can do all kinds of research on the person. There's all kinds of resources available for that. So I would want to know, who is Pastor Mensa Otable? What is his history? What does he believe? So, for example, when I went on your website, I always do that whenever I'm invited somewhere to study that church. So even though I've been here before, I should restudy it. And on your website, you're very clear. You have it published there, your core beliefs. You publish there your doctrines. You got your philosophy of ministry. You got everything in print there. So if I was looking to you as one of my voices, first thing I would do is to study the church, study your fruit, study your longevity, study your character, study the places that you preach, listen to you. So I would want to make an informed decision. The second thing I would do is to see who I know who is part of Pastor Mensa Otable's network of churches. If I know somebody, I would want to talk to them and ask them one simple question: why are you a member of that network? I'm not looking to argue with them. I'm just looking to see what benefit they find and why are they there. The third thing is I would ask myself, this is the spiritual. I've done my research on that. Now here comes the spiritual part, is I want to really pray and see God if this is where he wants me to be. The fourth thing, and the final thing that's come to my mind right now, is I want to be part of something that I can stay with.
Okay.
Put roots down with, grow with. Not at the temporary bridge in between. I'm here, I want to be there, but let me just stop here for a couple years before I move on somewhere else. I want to be in a place where I can have roots to go deep. I'll have wings to fly high. I'll have resources coming so that I can grow. I want to be somewhere where I can minnow. I can remain. I can last. So study the place, ask questions, be prayerful, and make a decision once you are in to stay in.
Thank you. At the beginning of your introduction, you mentioned that you are the firefighter, you are the ambulance, the crisis manager, and that when people read about crisis in leadership, especially in the U.S., most likely you would be contacted. So I guess you have some space there. And of course, you don't need to talk directly about any particular instant. But I suppose over these years, you've processed the whys, because it's always perplexing for Christians, pastors, when something happens and they wonder, how could such and such do such and such? In your thought, what goes wrong?
Nothing ever goes wrong. It's a slippery slide. Because going wrong implies, and I know what you mean though, going wrong implies something happened like that. And nothing happens just like that. It's a slippery slide. So a few things come up in my mind, which are very unfortunate, by the way. So when I get a phone call, normally I've already heard about it through other sources. Hey, Sam, get ready for a phone call. That kind of thing. I'll get a call either from the pastor, sometimes the pastor's spouse, sometimes from the church board, the decision-making presbytery. So when I go in there, my first thought is, who were they listening to? And usually the answer is no one. Wow. They listen to themselves. I'll never get caught. Nobody will ever know. A few months ago, I got a call. Significant church, over 11,000 in actual attendance every Sunday, totally debt-free, founding pastor. He had been going to the same massage parlor for the same benefits for 6 years.
Wow.
Every day.
Every day.
Think about that for a moment. Nobody will ever catch me. Nobody will find out. I deserve it. I'm too tired. This is how I get my relief, etc., etc., etc. So they had voices, just like there was in the Garden of Eden. There have always been voices. And voices have guided us. So the first thing is, who were they listening to? And usually they were not listening to anybody. Or they surrounded themselves with people who would never speak up to say, hey, pastor, this is happening, that is happening. Or when they do find out, instead of going to the pastor directly, they will go through others. And by the time the poison is already spread. So the first thing is, so what I was teaching you right here has so many implications. Whose voice are they hearing? Whose voice are they listening to? The second thing is, in every case, if you were to do a post-mortem on it, an autopsy on it, you can see where it actually started. It started with some kind of an abuse of power, abuse of authority, abuse of money, abuse of relationship, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, abuse of doctrine, twisting it to conform to their lifestyle at that time. Something went awry, but it was so subtle that it did not take shape till down the road, and by then they were embroiled in it. The sad part is, most pastors, when they're going through a difficult time wrestling with themselves, you know what Paul says, "Oh, wretched man that I am"? The Greek word for wretched man that I am, the word wretched had the picture of two wrestlers wrestling and totally exhausted in the fight. So these pastors had been wrestling, but they didn't have anybody who was their supermarket. They didn't have anybody who was their petrol station. They didn't feel safe to talk about what needs to happen. And so the things I was talking about earlier have many, many implications into a pastor's life. The greatest deterrence to that happening, this would sound so counterintuitive, but the greatest deterrence to any of that happening is a strong Christian biblical marriage.
That's good.
A strong marriage. Because when I look at all of them, the common theme is something was dysfunctional in their home. And whatever happens in private will manifest itself publicly. The platform is the last place you're going to see. The private is where the first thing you're going to see.
Wow.
So now I only have, when I talk to pastors, I'm most interested in their marriage. If their marriage is strong, it may have the capacity to deter them, to stop them, to correct them before they go down the slippery path.
Wow. So how does a person in that state, let's say he's slipped, and he's telling himself, I don't think I'll do it again, and then he slips. So it's becoming habitual. Is there a point where he can truly be helped before it totally gets out of hand? And what steps should that person take? What voices should he be hearing? How should he avail, or she avail herself to the right voices that will be of help?
I have evolved in my thinking on that. I have been involved in, unfortunately, maybe a couple hundred of these cases.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
The last thing I'm working toward with this pastor is restoration to the ministry. The second last thing I'm working on is helping the church stay stable. At this stage in my life, my number one goal is that him and his family get reunited and are secure. I'm working for the husband, wife, children, grandchildren. If I can secure that, which is not always possible, but if I can secure their relationship, the rest of these things come down the road. So many of my friends are in a hurry. They messed up and they want to take a 3-month sabbatical, go away for some kind of counseling, come back in the pulpit. I think that kind of dishonors Jesus. It takes longer. I'd much rather he, she get their life together, their family together, have a group of pastors around them that hold them accountable. Go sit in a church and don't do anything. Relearn, regrow, get your bearings all over again. You just can't get back in the pulpit. It's not something you do, it's something you are. Work on your human being rather than human doing. So now, when I get contacted, my first thing is helping the family get back together. So this pastor I was telling you about, 11,000 people, etc., etc. My first role was to talk to his wife, not him, because she's the collateral damage. She's a human being. Everybody wants to care about the church, and she gets forgotten in the mix. You can go from first lady to last lady overnight. So I talked to her first, then her husband, then them together. Not trying to rush the process. But today, after a few months of that, I'm glad to respond to you that everybody is back in the fold except for one son-in-law. One son-in-law. And that's got its own dynamics, but I believe he's moving in that direction. So that's what I do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Since we are talking about that, when pastors get into crisis, it's no longer personal. It affects the church. Church is not too sure what to do. And churches like to protect their pastors. They love their pastors. And sometimes they become the worst help for the pastor because they don't want the pastor to go through any process. They think they like him as he is. He's human like them. What should the church's posture be? How should people approach this if they truly want to be of help to the pastor?
You're talking about governance, especially in the country of Ghana. I'm not that aware of how governance works in the country of Ghana. So what I'm about to say, that's a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm about to say may be totally wrong. I think a church, a local church, no matter how you govern, it needs an apostolic oversight voice in the life of that church. It doesn't have to be governing, but there's got to be a voice in the life of the church that if something was to happen, the church could call this apostolic voice to come and help on the church level. And the church has to know that, who those voices are. I have served as that, not an apostolic voice, but I have served as an advisor to many churches, and every church knows, those churches know that if something was to happen, call Sam Chand. I'm not a miracle worker, but at least they have a voice that come in that can stabilize the situation, not necessarily long term, but can stabilize it for the moment. Every pastor needs a pastor.
So the question sometimes is when the quote unquote apostolic voice is subject to the same issues the pastor has. Because most likely people gravitate towards people who can protect them and can protect them because they themselves are battling the same issues. So then the person who is supposed to be the apostolic voice trivializes the process because he can't do otherwise. He himself is a victim. How does the church navigate to be sure that the voice we are listening to in this crisis, or a pastor who is in troubles, navigate and say, the voice I'm listening to is as vulnerable as I am? How does he get the right voice to listen to? Granting that is not the known apostolic voice they listen to, how do they get the right one?
I don't know how to answer that question. Seriously, because by the time you know it's the wrong voice, it's too late. Discernment is easy to talk about, but so elusive. The voices in my life that have helped me I'm thinking right now, going through all the voices, pastoral voices in my life. None of them were flamboyant, charismatic. I'm not talking about doctrine. I'm talking about effervescence. They were all steady, long-term. They were not seeking a platform. They spoke when spoken to. They were never asserting themselves. They were just steady voices. And sometimes when we are looking for somebody, we get impressed by their flamboyance, by their delivery on the platform, by how they can sway a crowd. I'm looking for more of a relationship. I'm looking for somebody who will slap me when I need to be slapped, and will hug me when I need to be hugged, who will protect me when I need to be protected, who will also point a finger and tell me how it is when I don't need to be that. That's hard to come by. But I'm thinking about the pattern in my life, and the pattern of my life has never been high profile. These are just people who have been in the trenches. You've been here 42 years. That's a long time. Even though you say you're a toddler, in the modern church world, for a church to last for 42 years, not just last, flourish, grow, increase, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, so your fruit, the Bible says, by their fruit shall you know them. So I look for fruit. But I don't know if there's a 100% guarantee, because I have been surprised by some of my friends. I mean, these are people that I thought I knew well. And then it happened. It was like, was I blind? I guess I was. And that's why it's hard to answer that question, because there's no guaranteed formula to know that, except to know their fruit.
Well, I'm not supposed to be answering questions. I'm supposed to be asking you. But I think what I would say to pastors, and especially I see it on our continent, we have a hierarchical system. This one is my father, and this is my father's father, this is my father's father, and so on. And sometimes when you look through the line, you see the same vulnerabilities running through. In other words, people take cover under people like themselves because they can defend them, they can protect them. If I get into trouble, this is the person I go to because he's in a similar trouble and he will fight for me. And so they build up this hierarchy. In the end, we complicate the issue we are trying to resolve. I think sometimes the problem with churches or pastors is, the ministry is not just ministry, it's also our livelihood. So there are livelihood concerns. If I go away for a year or 2 years for rehabilitation, how do I survive? How does my family survive? It's easier for them to keep going because they need to support themselves. Not in a bad way of making money wrongly, but that's their job. It's like a lawyer being told, don't practice law for 2 years, or a doctor being told, don't practice medicine for 2 years. How is he supposed to survive if he doesn't practice? So I think those are the conflicts pastors are faced with, is real survival. Therefore, instead of dealing with the issue, they will rather make survival the issue and fight for survival more than help. Any word you can share with us before we close?
I said to pastors, get a job. Just like your church members, get a job.
Get a job.
Get a job. The other thing that my wife and Brenda and I have done, Brenda and I love pastors. We used to be a pastor. My daddy was a pastor. I love pastors. I honor pastors. There have been at least 12 to 15 pastors who made terrible choices, ended up losing their income stream. So at least for 12, 15 of them that I can think of right now, might be more. Brenda and I have paid for their rent, for their food, for their groceries. I've said to them, you get a job. For the next year, we will take care of your housing. We'll take care of your food. We've done that many, many times. I remember there was this one pastor, large church, messed up. And I said to him, he said, so can you help me get restored in the ministry? I said to him at that time, no, I don't think so. But I can help you get a job. But the job that he got would not pay all that he could. So I said to him, tell me what's your gap. He told me what the gap was. And Brenda and I send that every month, whatever his gap was. Years passed by. kind of lost contact, didn't know what's going on. But maybe 10 years later, I was speaking at a major conference and a few thousand people there. It was break time, and I was coming out with a new book, and I was going to my signing table to autograph books. And as I was going, security was with me as I was leaving. This man I did not recognize, he stepped out of the aisle and he hugged me, which is fine. And he starts crying. And he held on to me and cried and cried and cried. And didn't say a word, just cried on my shoulder. So by now, my host is getting nervous. They don't know this person. Security does not know what to do with this. Don't want to create a scene. Finally, he pulled back from me, seemed like eternity, and looked at me. He said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "I heard you were coming to our area, so I traveled to see you." He said, "Remember?" And then he gave me his name. It all came back to me. He said, "I'm alive today because you took care of me." I'm not saying that to elevate anything. I'm simply saying that I think helping somebody back in the church pulpit is not the fastest, best thing that you want to do. You want them to restore their humanity, their dignity, their family, get them whole. Otherwise, all you're doing is delaying another round of the same dysfunction. Sanctification takes time. Sanctification takes time. And I don't think, I'm about to say something that I probably shouldn't. I have challenges with counseling sin. You repent from sin. You acknowledge you sinned. You don't make excuses and reasons for your sin. You turn back away from your sin. Counseling may come down the road, but I think God is looking for a repentant heart. And that has become a big focus of the work that I do with pastors now. It's difficult to get to that place, but most of them do, and thank God for that.
Thank you so much, sir. Let's honor God for Dr. Sam Chang. It's been a very heavy conversation. We've dealt with some very important things that affects pastors, affect churches. And I think it's important if we want to build healthy churches that last long, not just personal empires that only survive for the lifetime of a person, but healthy churches that last for hundreds of years. We need to build them well. And we need to build them beyond the comfort of a person, no matter how much anointed or disanointed we think they are. The church must go beyond just the comfort of an individual to build something substantial, something our children's children can be proud to belong to and serve Christ in. So thank you so much, sir, and God bless you. Thank you very much.